So my name is Keat Welsh. I'm going to do a brief visual description before we get started. So I am a short, white person in my late 30s. I'm non-binary and I have short brown hair. I'm wearing a black shirt that says, "The future is accessible," and jean shorts. And I have a tattoo, and I have tattoos on my arm as well as my legs. And I'm currently using a black rollator walker. I'm here today as a sick and disabled educator and artist. I grew up in and out of hospitals, and I have a chronic illness that fluctuates and always needs managing. I started doing disability activism and advocacy as a survival strategy. I wanted to make the world a better place for people, for me and people like me. But over the decades, I've learned from self-described oracles such as Alice Wong and Patty Byrne that centering the people most impacted by systems of oppression is really what drives change to a better world. Disabled activists have long been touting the importance of interdependence within all communities and highlighting how we as humans are interdependent at our very core. We rely on each other for our food, our housing, our schools, communities coming together to support each other. Interdependence can foster a culture that moves towards liberation. Patty Byrne and Alice Wong both passed away last year in 2025. And every day I think about how we can honor their legacy of dreaming, of creating a better world. So I'm up here today with nothing new to say, but wanting to amplify the voices of my disabled Oracle ancestors. I'm here to bring their visions and others to our communities here in Toronto.
So I'm Dev Ramsawakh. I use they, them pronouns. I am a transmasculine Indo-Caribbean queer and disabled person with short, wavy black hair, facial piercings, and facial hair. I'm also wearing glasses and a long-sleeved black and purple striped shirt and black jeans because I don't know how to dress for the weather. While I don't believe that medical diagnoses are needed to validate disabled identity for many reasons, I will say that I was born with a rare and hard-to-say form of spina bifida called lipomyellomeningocele. It basically means that I was born with a cyst out of my spinal column covered by a fatty bump you can see on my back. I experienced partial paralysis from that point down. I often describe myself as a multidisciplinary artist, storyteller, and educator. I started off as a freelance writer, working in personal nonfiction, short fiction, and poetry, and eventually branched out to podcasting, filmmaking, and whatever other media I can use to tell stories. I'm also the other half of the Crypt Collective. We work under the name Crypt, not just to reclaim a harmful term with a violent history against disabled people, much in the same way that we use the word queer, but also as an acronym for Community Resistance Intimacy Project. Crypt Collective draws on the framework that Sins Invalid provided for doing disability justice organizing. We chose the name Community Resistance Intimacy Project because, not just because of the acronym Crypt, but also the importance of disabled community in the face of isolation and of resistance against ableism. Intimacy was chosen because we saw how structural change was created through one-on-one connections. Interpersonal intimacies often drive change and illuminate how we can shift culture toward accessibility. Keat and I started this collective back in 2018 when we began offering anti-ableism workshops. Since then, we have facilitated over 80 workshops and group discussions and worked with a number of other disabled artists and activists.
Alice Wong was a prominent figure in the North American disability rights and disability justice movements. Alice Wong began the Disability Visibility Project in 2014 in partnership with StoryCorp to record the oral histories of disabled people in the United States, which are archived in the Library of Congress. She's published many books, including her initial Disability Visibility, which our very own Dev is featured in. And she talked about the significance of disability visibility in creating a more inclusive and accessible world, moving away from narratives of pity, cure, or shame. In 2019, she collaborated with fellow disability activists Sandra Ho and Maya Mingus and created Access is Love. They describe this project, Access is Love, as Access is Love aims to help build a world where accessibility is understood as an act of love. They believed access should be collective responsibility instead of the sole responsibility placed on a few individuals. This really resonates with me because I believe we can all take accountability for creating a better, more accessible world for all of us. Disability is something that every one of us will experience in our lifetimes, if we're lucky. And disability is part of that human experience, part of human diversity. After all, we all have bodies and minds. How do we love each other in our wholeness? Part of loving each other, being interdependent, is creating access. Access can be an act of love. There are online checklists and how-tos of doing access, but really, like love, it is personal and unique. Everyone needs to be loved a little differently, and everyone has unique access needs. Let's move towards a more loving world, a world that really centers access.
Part of the Access is Love concept is understanding access intimacy. This is a term coined by Mia Mingus to describe, as she puts it, that elusive, hard-to-describe feeling when someone else gets your access needs. In disability community, we often use this to describe how we feel when our access needs, whether it's physical accessibility or communication or sensory, are anticipated and accommodated without prompting or being made to jump through hoops. Our access needs are seen as just another part of our lives and existence as any other part of ourselves. This is in contrast with access hostility, a term coined by disabled activist and academic Ellen Samuels, which she describes as access grudgingly granted with resentment, disbelief, demands for repeated explanations, proposals of alternate arrangements that never work. It can be even more toxic than access denied. I'm sure we've all had an experience where we have asked for something that we need, whether it was disability related or not, and been met with so much resistance and resentment that even if we eventually get it, we kind of wish that we'd never asked for it at all.
So how do we practice this? And how have I or how have we personally experienced this access intimacy? So we're just going to tell you a short story. One of the first clear examples of access intimacy for me was over a decade ago. I had a new friend who would soon become my best friend. They texted me, inviting me out for a tea. They texted saying, "Hey, do you want to try a new place for our hangout? It has no steps, the washroom is on the main floor. However, there's no push button, but I'm happy to help if you want. Also, they have matcha lattes. Are those your current favorites still?" So technically, this shop was not the most accessible place. It did not have any push buttons. But this text showed me how deeply they had thought about my needs and desires. My friend had either called ahead or looked online, or visited the place to scope it out. This was not about perfection. Intent really mattered here. My friend showed me how access could be a form of love, or budding love in that instance. And as I talk about access intimacy and access as love, I am reminded about the quote that we hear that is in the beginning of the book, We Move Together. I don't think I actually read it because it was on the very, very first page, but the quote in the beginning of the book, We Move Together, says, "We are powerful, not despite the complexities of our bodies and minds, but because of them. We move together with nobody left behind."
So for me, a few years ago, I had been living on my own after getting out of an abusive relationship. I was struggling with taking care of myself or even leaving the house without having panic attacks. While it was one of the most difficult periods of my life, it was also a time where my community really exemplified access intimacy for me and how I was able to survive that period. In one instance, I had a friend ask me if I had food to eat, and I didn't. So they sent over a delivery of pilau, which is a Trinidadian dish that is culturally associated as a comfort food. It's also one that's very filling and nutritious. Not only did I not have to ask for this help, it was offered to me out of care and done in a way that honored our shared cultural connection as well. There was also another time when I had to cancel plans with a group of friends because I was struggling with leaving the house. This was not only as a result of the trauma I had been through and was still experiencing, but due to how a COVID infection I'd had a few months earlier was still impacting my physical health. When I expected my friends to say they'd miss me and they'd try again another time, instead they asked if they could come to me instead. Instead of spending that evening alone and feeling betrayed by my physical and mental health, I ended up spending it feeling loved and seen and connected. These are both times that still stick with me now, and I really think show how access is not a burden or an obligation, but is actually a way to connect with and show love for each other. So
as we finish here, we invite you all to reflect on what access intimacy would look like in your own life. How would you like to receive it? Or how can you share it with others? Remember, access is love. Thank you.